Neither an individual's feelings nor his experiences nor his interpretation of his feelings or experiences can override, add to, supplant, or modify what the Bible normatively interpreted says. Neither an individual's feelings nor his experiences nor his interpretation of his feelings and experiences can override, add to, supplant, or modify what the Bible normatively says. Experiences and feelings may be real, but they are too often misinterpreted due to insufficient evidence, jumping to false conclusions, stereotypical prejudices, perspectives which are unbiblical. First of all, when you're sharing something from the Word of God, does it matter if you're more or less emotional about it? Sometimes emotion gets in the way of the person listening to you. If you're clear and not monotone, but expressive and explaining to it whether you're emotionally attached to it or not, shouldn't be an issue. The person's all too emotional. Oh, you don't really believe this. Yes, I do. Some people have more emotions than others. The Bible doesn't come with an emotional instruction thermometer. Deep within each individual is a sin nature which can be influenced by the devil in the world, causing within one a propensity to think, say, and do wrong, which affects each individual's interpretation of what is true and righteous. 8. Suggested routines, resources to arrive at the normative meaning of the Bible of a passage, a chapter in the Bible. 1. Or A. Determine the wording of a passage, a chapter of the Bible that is closest to the original text by following the normative rules of language, context, and logic, one verse at a time, in the order that it appears. Take notes relative to variants in the original language from one or more interlinear Bibles of the original language, aided by one or more commentaries on the original Greek, Hebrew text, and one or more books on the subject of Bible difficulties. You have resources. I've got them. You can get them. Just go to a bookstore or order them online now. I forget the name of that. Couple of nice websites that you can order stuff inexpensively, and sometimes they're shipped for free. Resources: Complete Biblical Library, Old Testament, New Testament, interlinear, available in public libraries, or purchase electronic version at Word Search Bible. Well, they've been taken over, so it's no longer available. But you can go online and get interlinears. A good interlinear is a couple of places there. New Testament Text and Translation Commentary by Comfort. Other interlinears available online. You can go to this area here. Blue Letter Bible. That's what I was trying to think of. But you can go to this place here, and there are a number of others that are available. They're all adequate. Or at bookstores. Alleged Discrepancies by John Haley, available to download online in PDF. Bible Difficulties by Geisler and Howe, available electronically at some places or bookstores. Septuagint Greek Old Testament, available to download online and so on. Do search. Wonderful internet now. We have resources available very quickly. 2. Make a list of the variants for a verse, including which manuscripts have each variant and the proposed reasons offered for selecting one variant over another. Consult the Bible Difficulties books you have to see if they offer any information on the verses with variants. I love Bible Knowledge Commentary, Expositor's Bible Commentary. Both of those I use all the time. And they mention different translations and variants in the original text. Also, check out the New Testament Text and Translation Commentary. Write down what you have determined is the closest to the original text with the English wording for each verse, with variants in 21st century American English. You can go King James Bible, but you have to acclimate yourself to 16th century English. So 21st century American English, like the NASB or New King James Version, that best fits the language, context, and logic of that verse. If there still remains a significant difference in variant texts so that you cannot be definitive on what the original text might be, present the various possibilities based on the internal evidence of the passage without making a decision for one or the other. Bible Letters Commentary, or especially Expositor's Bible Commentary. It's 40 volumes or something, and they're very good, and I have them online, and I have them on my website. So you can buy them online. It's expensive, though, but You can get them on one of these Bible study websites and add that as an extra set of books. This is not disastrous because the Bible repeats itself all the time relative to the doctrines of the faith. So missing a doctrinal message in one passage, one can be assured that doctrine will be more clearly available elsewhere in the Bible. The better skilled you become at this, and the better your resources, the fewer such passages will be a problem for you. More often than not, the context of the passages, carefully considered, will rule in favor of one variant or another, or the variants do not make a difference in the meaning of the passage. B. Arrive at a translation in 21st century English of a passage, a chapter of the Bible which best reflects the original text by following the normative rules of language, context, and logic. 1. Compare a passage, a chapter of the Bible in the interlinear Bible of the original language, including those verses with variant problems, which you have already resolved, with at least 7 versions of translations in English in order to select the version as modified by you, which best reflects the original text in 21st century English by following the normative rules of language, context, and logic. Guess what? Most of the time, the NASB, I love it, sometimes it changes the word order and stuff to make the English more understandable, but it doesn't change the meaning. Here's what I have. NASB, New King James Version. They're close to each other, so close they're like sister brother. Young's Literal Translation, Holman Standard Christian Standard Bible, American Standard Version, King James Version, NIV, and we have our interlinears. You can I got this downloaded. So look at this. See the Greek letters transliterated in English, and then a dictionary tells you what it is. Indicative, aorist, active. You can learn what these are. Get a grammar book on this, and a good expression of a translation. He said, and see how it breaks it down. You look at, and he said. He said, and, see, and. So I have all kinds of resources which you can get equally. Any case. Those verses with variant problems which you already resolved with at least 7 versions of translations in English in order to select the version as modified by you, put it in brackets, which best reflects the original text in 21st century English by following the normative rules of language, context, and logic, just normally reading it. Make your own modifications in brackets to comply with those rules of interpretation. Each of the 7+ versions that you choose to use should have been translated largely in accordance with the normative rules, avoiding paraphrases. NIV is somewhat paraphrasical and makes mistakes. Substituted words and restructuring sentences whenever linguistically possible in the English language. Many versions are available online. The versions you choose to compare with the interlinear should include a number of versions which are noted for their literal translation and a number that attempt to be faithful to the word order of the original text, such as the Young's Literal Translation, the Authorized Version, and the King James Version, which do both. These 3 versions and others have archaic words which need to be corrected to 21st century English by consulting an archaic English dictionary available online or comparing them to 21st century English versions. Archaic words often have significantly different meanings than what the same word means in today's English. Also trustworthy are the following versions in 21st century English: NASB, New King James Version, Holman Standard, Holman Christian Standard, NIV. Occasionally, the Septuagint, Greek Old Testament, might be needed since it is often quoted in the New Testament by the New Testament authors quoting Jesus. It is available online in PDF format. Select the most accurate version, translation, as modified by you, from amongst those 7+ versions and translations. Add in brackets your corrections in accordance with your personal study of the original language manuscript. Use your available resources. So to restate, the version translation you select and modify from the group of versions you are comparing to the interlinear Bible original text to represent a translation in English of the original text of each verse should 1. Or A. Reflect the proper meaning of each word in modern 21st century English that best fits the context of that verse. Note that the interlinear Bible defines each word as to its particular part of speech, tense, number, gender, mood, voice, person, stem, and so on, and with a suggestion of translation, which are usually very, very useful to aid in your understanding, interpretation, and decision. And the 7 or more versions that you use of the Bible and Hebrew, Greek, Archaic English dictionaries will aid as well. Hebrew Greek dictionaries offer a number of possible meanings, which may or may not agree with the interlinear Bible's rendering of the word in English. Take care to note differences amongst the versions and dictionaries you are using and determine the best meaning for the context. Refer to grammar books, some of which usually come with the interlinear Bible, to explain the parts of speech as needed. Other Greek Hebrew grammar books are available online or in bookstores. So this is what I've got. See, I have this. He said, a certain man, had 2 sons. How hard is that to translate? See? And you just work on NASB. And he said, a man had 2 sons. Young's Literal Translation. And he said, a certain man had 2 sons. And then he said, a certain man had 2 sons. See? He also said, a man had 2 sons. Very little difference. And also, no big deal. So B, keep the word order of the original language as far as possible within the framework of the normative rules of 21st century American English grammar to make it more intelligible, in order to maintain the emphasis points and the context established in the original text, because a lot of times they emphasize things in the beginning of the sentence. It's not the proper English word order, but leave it that way if it can be understood. The Young's Literal Translation, as compared to the NASB and the New King James Version, are very useful in this task. And the AV and King James Version are also helpful on this as well. Sentences in 21st century English may at times be awkward in order to be accurate and best represent the original text, but they must not violate the rules of 21st century English grammar of acceptable English sentence structure. Otherwise, you may be confused of what it's actually saying. C. Keep the verb tenses consistent with the original text by referring to Greek, Hebrew, grammar books, and dictionaries available, sometimes in used bookstores, comparing these with the 7 or more versions in order to be faithful to the verb form of the original text. YLT, Young's Literal Translation, and other versions often attempt to be faithful to the original verb form. Compare what it says with the NASB and New King James Version as well as other versions until you arrive at a determination of the closest version of the 7+ versions to the original text which you're using within the normative rules of the English language, context, and logic. Now remember, Greek you can change the verbs around a lot. English tries to stay consistent. But there are other ways of expressing. Refer to Greek, Hebrew dictionaries and grammar books when questions arrive as to the proper translation of the verb tense and of the original word. Note that it's better to have an awkward but accurate sentence than a smooth-sounding one, inaccurate one. So NIV sometimes makes a mistake and tries to be smooth and then sacrifices accuracy. D. I do this a lot. You put something in brackets. Have in brackets the changes you make to the translation in accordance with these normative rules in order to signify your particular interpretation. Reference the reasons for the bracketed changes with footnotes. As you determine the best version translation of each verse of the original text, put the verses together in the order that they appear in the passage and chapter under study. So I use these. NASB, New King James Version, are like sisters. Holman Standard, NIV, and then the ones that go more literal, NIV, King James Version, Authorized Version, YLT, I like that a lot, LXX, Septuagint. Take care to change archaic words into 21st century English, which appear in the last 3 versions. Hebrew and Greek lexicons and grammar books come with the complete biblical library, which I have, which is out of print, unless you can find it, but it's expensive, a lot of volumes. You can go online and get your interlinear. Other Greek, Hebrew lexicons and grammar books are available online or at bookstores. Make sure that lexicons are not limited to Strong's meanings only, because that limits itself to what the translators of the King James Version have, and they're not always what you might prefer. All available meanings should be listed in the dictionaries in order to allow you to